We are back. It's just about 13 hours 42 here on 94.1, and for those of you who are joining us now, in case you missed it, I do have the Honorable Priya Manickchand in the hot seat as our first guest this afternoon, and so let me just start off and ask, what's up with you, my dear?
Lots. Right now, I think the whole country is consumed with getting an election date, an early election date. I think it's very disruptive to everybody. I mean, I don't think I'm in any way special. So I think I reflect the nation's view, wherever you vote, however you vote. Businessman, farmer, student, teacher, politician, that what we need is an early election date so that we could settle this matter and get back to developing Guyana.
All right, so I saw recently it was the AFC at a press conference actually was calling on the PPP that they should actually, their party should go back to Parliament and extend the life of the government so as to facilitate elections sometime around the end of February into March.
The AFC is absolutely hypocritical. They have no standing. They're trying to make themselves relevant with a weekly press conference. I don't even think people believe anything they say anymore. You don't see any breaking news from the AFC. They have been highly inconsistent with everything that they have done. So there's no consistency with them. They're untrustworthy. And I wouldn't pay any mind to what they say. We have been very clear that it's unnecessary to go back to the National Assembly. But we wouldn't be surprised if that's an excuse that is going to be used now to further delay naming of an early election date. The party has been very clear. We're not going back to the National Assembly for a variety of reasons. These are the same people who never said before. We offered to go back to the National Assembly before the list expired. We offered to go back. Although there was a 3-month in the Constitution, there were very clear messages sent that we could go back to the National Assembly and do what the Constitution says we can do, and there was absolutely no effort on their parts to do that. They have done nothing to show good faith. This is a party who said they would uphold law and order. Remember, they were the gems, they were the angels, the PPP bad and the PNC bad. They will be the balancing force. They're angelic, they're clean, they're fresh, they're new. And what have they done? They have done worse. In fact, I think the worst sin they have committed is not keeping the promises, not failing to keep the promises they made. The worst sin I think they committed is they killed people's hope in third-party politics. So nobody is going to trust any party for a good long scores of years coming to the front again and saying we'll be the balance of power. And the AFC did that single-handedly because of their greed. These are people who know.
When you say that, you're shooting down things like, is it fed up?
Well, I am not shooting down fed up and Anog. I'm saying the AFC's behavior has completely killed the hope of any third party and people who believe in the concept of third party politics. And that is right at the AFC's feet. Ramjatan, Nagamutu, Patterson, Cathy Hughes, Gaskin, those people. And there is if you read, there was a very painful letter yesterday written by Alan Fenty in the Stabrook News. It wasn't a column, he wrote a letter. And he said he has such indifferent feelings now towards the concept of a third party. And all he did, because he can articulate matters well, is really spoke for a large number of persons who didn't put pen to paper and write it to the newspaper. So I'm not doing anything. I'm saying they did it. They did it. These are people who should have resigned. They have amongst them a good set of lawyers. They damn well know what the Constitution says. They should have resigned since December last year. Keep holding on to power, holding on to power, holding on to power to draw down a salary. They could have resigned, and we could still have the election date whenever the Granger says it's going to be due. So no, I am not shooting down anything. I am actually someone who would like to see every political party get a fair chance, because I think that's the way we could hold each party accountable. If you have fair competition, then you're forced to be better, each party. And so I think they've just taken themselves out of the race completely. In fact, if they don't think they've taken themselves out of the race, I challenge them, go to an election alone. We saw what happened when they went to an election alone in November of last year. They were beaten by more than 117,000 votes, I think it was. Any party who gets that kind of walloping is no longer a party to run any race.
And would you say that it is on, particularly the strength of the local government elections last year, because we've heard this trumpet a lot too, that you have had that kind of momentum coming into, and hence the demands for an early election to be able to continue on that momentum?
Well, I don't think it's any one thing. Let's go back a little bit. Prior to 2015, what we had was 23 years of the PPPC in government. And at least for the last 10 years, the PPPC, everything that happened, you were blamed. Rainfall too hard and the place is flooded, it's the PPP's fault. Somebody get a cold, it's the PPP's fault. And that was pushed and capitalized on by the PNC, the APNU, whatever they call themselves, and the AFC. They held themselves out to be people who were upright and upstanding and lawful, and they would fulfill all these promises that they made. They went into government. So before the 2018 election, local government election, went into government and immediately raised their salaries. None of their 100-day promises were fulfilled. None of their other promises were fulfilled. I just left home in blackout. So if I look a little funny to you today, if my makeup is on a little bit skewed, it's because of blackout. Can't see. The Constitution was being breached like crazy. There are awful and credible claims of corruption against a large number of ministers. So much so that the president, when he was properly a president, saw it fit to move them. I mean, that's no way to treat an evidentially good corruption claim. You should fire them. These are things they said they would do, and they have done none of it. None of it. And then we went to a local government election in 2016, and people let them know how they feel. And then we went to one again in 2018, and the nation let them know how they feel. But Stan, we don't go to an election alone. Running up to the election, we have a lot of meetings and so on with people across this country in every single community, not PPP known communities or strong PPP communities across the country. And across the country, people were saying, we can't live like this anymore. Do you know what it is? I just close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you cannot come in here to work. You can't go to any other radio station to work. You can't jump on a stage and do what you're good at because you simply can't earn. How are you going to live? That is the reality for the whole sugar belt in Berbice. The people at Wales just unceremoniously knocked off, not even given their severance pay. I was in Berbice in the last week in August, and you could cry. People at that point didn't have, some people had cloth, uniform fabric, but they couldn't yet take it to the seamstress. Some people hadn't yet bought their materials. And some people were depending on charities, recently established charities that would give them a book bag with things in it, 5 exercise books and pencil case and so on. That is the reality of people. So when we met them for the 2018 elections, people were very clear. We don't want to live like this anymore. And we elected you, and this is what we want you to do. You have to find a way to get us out of this. And, well, after then, the 21st of December is history. The government fell. The government fell. That was the headline in every single newspaper, of course, except the Chronicle. Not only locally, but across the Caribbean region. Newspapers in every island had an article and a screaming headline, Guyana government falls, or words to that effect. And we know what happened from then. So you asked me if it's the fact that they were greedy or the fact that the AFC is no longer relevant that caused the no confidence. No, it's a combination of their failure to keep their promises, their failure to look after people in every sector. We had teachers having to jump on the road and beat drums and pressure pots and so on to get benefits that they had grown accustomed to for the previous 10 years. We had rice farmers being told and millers being told, well, rice is not a government business, rice private sector business. We had sugar workers, instead of getting 20% that they were guaranteed and offered, they were fired. We had, taxes that came upon everybody, the donkey cart man, the coconut man, everybody got new taxes to pay, 200 new taxes. The government is collecting $6 billion more in taxes from people. That means we are paying that. And what are we seeing for it? I mean, if you were collecting taxes and people were benefiting from that, individual lives got better, I don't think anybody would care. They would say, usual thing, let the politicians deal with that. But when you're collecting that, so you're taking it out of my pocket, and I still can't eat, and I still can't work, and I still can't, and this is not PPP supporters. This is people across this country that just find life a lot harder than when before this change happened. And so that is why you have the majority of the people in this country saying they want an election now.
You believe the wanting of an election now is going to see a return of the PPP to power?
I have every confidence that, in fact, Stan, I believe one of the best things that ever happened in 2015 and is for the APNU AFC to have taken office. That's one of the best things that ever happened, because people now get a chance to see what the PPP achieved, how their life was, what the PPP's faults were, and now what the AFC APNU have achieved, what their faults are, and how people are living now, their quality of life now. People are seeing that. So they have a real comparison.
But is it too a little unfair to compare 23 to 4?
Well, do you want us to compare the first 4 years? Okay, so let's do what you think is fair. I wasn't comparing the full 23 years. I was looking more at a trend. But they have in their first year in office, what did they do? They raised their own salaries. They knock off 7,000 people.
They raised the salaries of all parliamentarians.
That's often a myth. They did. But you know what the opposition parliamentary salary raise was? $20,000. I think my salary right now, my full salary, I'm not sure what it is exactly, so I might be off a couple thousand. It's $220,000. So to raise yours by 100% and put on a $20,000 there, it doesn't matter. I don't think you could convince people that we have all benefited from the largesse in this awful way. But let us go back to the question you asked. What did the PPP do in 1992 when it came into office? Immediately, they cut the number of ministers. They immediately said, all the old people in Guyana, once you're 65 years and older, and you are Guyanese living here for 2 years, you're going to get an old age pension. Everybody. We don't care if you're black, you're white, you vote for PPP or PNC. Once you're Guyanese, you're going to get that. Prior to that, the year before, you could only get it if you had a party card. Immediately, the night shelter was established. Immediately, the drop-in center was established. I'm talking about by 1993. And you know how I know this? If you go back to the Hansard, so you could check everything I'm saying here. Immediately, there was a search for markets in rice and how we could do more with the scientists at Nari and those places to get better produce, more yield in 1 acre of rice. So there was a large number of things that were done in the first year. I went to this place called Hururu in up the Berbice River, but we went through Linden. By 1993, they had a primary school built. By 1993, they had a primary school built. The first year in office, okay, forget the first year. I just gave you the first year of the PPP's time in office. Let us take the last 4 years of the APNU's time in office. People lost jobs. Any school that is being built is being built. We just saw a school open at Victoria. That is a plan, literally a drawing we left there with funding from the IDB, $10 million US funding that we left there. We secured and left in the country. Where the school was going to be was our plan, because we're looking to make sure everybody has access. It's at Golden Grove. everything that they have done has been something that we did. You point me to one new initiative that is impactful in large numbers in this country, that we could say they did in their first year. Show me. None. So I wasn't looking at 23 years versus 4 years. But you can look at it like that, because by 23 years, in 1992 when we took over, the debt ratio was so high. For every dollar we earned, we were paying back more than what we earned in debt. We didn't leave that country for them. We left a much better country. We left a country that already cleared up some of that backlog of punishing and struggling and so on. We left a country that was growing, 8 years of consecutive growth in the economy. So they had a great springboard to jump off from, one that we did not have in 1992. And so the comparison, they should actually be judged harsher, because they've done nothing with the goodness. Look, we left a thriving housing ministry. 100,000, 120,000 families who did not have house lots before have house lots, now have capital, they can go to the bank and get loans, have their own homes. They didn't have one in 92, and they collapsed in every material sense, collapsed the one we left them in 2015. So you don't even have, I said 120,000, you don't even have 1,000 house lots that were given out under this government. And so we can't, listen, I could tell you all I want to tell you from my perspective, Stan. If there is something I know as well as I know my name, it is that you have your ear to the ground. And so people feel this. People feel that difference. They understand the difference in what their life used to be and what it is now. And that's not something you can erase away with fancy words and pledges and slogans. That is stuff people are feeling. When you can't put lunch in your children's lunch kit, when you have the majority of parents saying, here, let's use this bag that we had last year, when they're accustomed to changing bags every year, when you have people saying, oh, hold on, where are these exercise books that we were supposed to have gotten and that we were getting consistently for all these years, before school opened, why aren't we getting it anymore? People feel that, they know that. They understand when they have to go in their pockets and take it out. And you have a lot of people who are really, we have a lot of single parent women that I come into contact with that find it extremely difficult in any circumstance to send their children to school and to give them more than they themselves had when they were young. When you add things like when they get into the supermarket or get into the stores, they're paying more VAT, more VAT, because VAT has now been placed on so many other items, and they're spending more in those stores, they find it much more difficult in the circumstances that were already difficult. And like I said, they feel it, they know it, they understand it, in ways that I can't explain to you.
My final question to you before we take a break and get ready for our next guest comes from someone who is looking at us on social media. And they're asking, because evidently you're in campaign mode in the next elections.
Yes.
Your party is. And one of the things that they saw, and they're asking if it is not that it's somewhat disingenuous for you to be promising, let's say you, not you personally, the party to be promising free education at the university level when it was your party in government that would have implemented paid university education.
When the PPP came into office, you have to understand the state of the country. And I understand why it's difficult for people to understand. I was 15 or 14 or 15 when they came into office. Teenager. So, and there are a lot of people who grew up under the PPP because they were trusted with the vote of the electorate for a very long time. When if a loan was taken during that time, it was 4 to 6% interest. That was the interest rate. For every dollar that was earned, we had to pay back a whole lot of that in debt. It was a very, very different economy. It's either, it was Cherry Jagan that started the University of Guyana with the intention that it would be accessible to all. So it was either we improve its standards by charging something and $100 and something thousand dollars. I mean, that's expensive for anybody, but it wasn't astronomical. We're now in a place where we believe we can offer it free. But let's compare us and them. 4 years ago, they said they would make it free. They went into office and they raised the fees by an excess of 37%. So we don't need to go back and compare us then with us now. There were two extremely different economic times. But we are saying, and we have made promises before that we have shown you we could fulfill, that now with this economy, especially with the emergence of the oil and gas sector, we can make university education free within the first 5 years. We never make promises, Stan, that we can't keep. And that's the difference with us and them, because we see ourselves as people who will always be in office, and people are going to ask us about those promises and why they weren't kept. Let's just take one ministry I ran, the Ministry of Human Services between 2006 and 2011. Little known fact, every single manifesto promise that was made in that ministry, every single one, without fail, was kept. And then we still did more things that we did not promise that you encountered as we went along, that needed to be done. So people can trust us that whatever it is we promise, it's because we've already sat down copious amounts of hours and costed this out with one of the best economists in the region, that is Jack Deo, not only in the country, recognized across the region for being a master economist, costed it out. There are things that people come because there's a manifesto committee and say, I want this. This would be fantastic, and it would be extremely sexy to make those promises out there. And he says, no, that's irresponsible because we will not be able to fund that. So that's the kind of, but when you see promises made on issues, I can tell you that they are very reachable, very realistic promises, with hard work, of course, and prudent management. And we should be, I would invite the person who asked you the question to trust us that that can happen. In the same way that we've done things we've promised before. We were the party that brought in universal primary education. That means everybody across this country could access a primary school. We are the country who caused Guyana to be recognized in the Commonwealth Caribbean for having the highest enrollment rate at 85% in our nursery classes. We are we're about 90-something% in terms of who can access secondary education. So we are absolutely certain that when we say we can offer free university education within the first 5 years, that it can and will happen, because we know that we will come to you again 5 years from now and ask you for your vote. And we know that we have to be trusted on issues. We do not take people's votes for granted. We do not play with it the way this government has, the APNU AFC, and we know we need you to trust us again. And so that would be an extremely, a breach of our contract with the people if we say we're going to do something and we don't do it. And we believe that we will be punished for that in the next, in the 2025 elections. And so no political party wants to be punished for not keeping its promise. So I'm absolutely certain it's something that can happen and that it will happen.
Well, I want to say thank you very much, Ms. Priya Manickchand, for spending some time. Certainly hope that we could do this again, because there's so much more that we can talk about, but we must pay some bills and come back for
Yes.
our next guest.
Well, thank you very much, Stan, and good afternoon to all your listeners.